Rajo, 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 Katipunan, Rajo, Katipunan, Rajo, Katipunan, Rajo, 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 Katipunan, Rajo, Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay Atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugo, todo sa kayod, punong at tulong. Lipad na Blue Eagle, galing giting at gigil, blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan.
Welcome to the Rundown, where we take you right into the action with the latest sports news, updates, game previews, breakdown, and analysis in, around, across, and beyond the Ateneo. And now, let's get ready to run down!
All right. What is up again, Blue Eagle Nation? Thank you so much for tuning in to us only here in Radyo Katipunan 87.9, the voice of the Blue Eagle. And if you have been tuning into us for the past 4 straight weeks, my basketball buddy and I, Selina the Dios of the Ateneo Lead Eagles, have been chronicling every highlight, every great moment, every insider story that, has sprung up to our attention ever since the Last Dance docu-series came about. Selena, 4 straight weeks of doing this. It's the Last Dance has reached its last recap. How are you feeling at this point?
Bittersweet, bittersweet. I think just like MJ felt that he could go for 7 straight championships, I feel like the docu-series could have gone on for many more episodes.
Like if it had gone on if it had gone on like for another season, like we would be extending this docu-series to what, 15 episodes or something? But I mean, oh gosh, that's a whole nother what if story about
Mhm.
what if they had stayed for another year or so, signed their 1 year deals.
True.
But I don't know, like again, it's bittersweet. It has come to an end. But are you prepared to answer the question? What do we look forward to now, in the absence of live sports, now that the Last Dance is over?
Nope, I'm still trying to figure that out, with MECQ now. And they're kind of lightening up some of the restrictions in terms of like the non-contact sports. I think, if I'm not mistaken, under GCQ, sports like golf will be allowed.
Mhm.
I think I read that. I may have read that somewhere. So, I'm still gonna miss my action-packed basketball, but maybe I'll just have to stick to highlights.
For the meantime, or for aren't you allowed to at least have limited practices or nothing like that?
Nothing like that. Right now, all our training is virtual. So we get sent workouts. We do it at home.
Right.
We have to practice our dribbling. We'd be lucky if we have access to a court. But right now, with the way things are going, I think they're still keeping it pretty strict in terms of restrictions.
And there's this big gap. There's this big hole. Just
Mm-hmm.
it was just created by the Last Dance being removed from our Monday evening TV schedule, so to speak. But well, here we go. For me, uh, growing up in the latter part of the MJ era, I was young enough to at least see the second of his repeats, and what, like one of my favorite pastimes would be if I'm just scrolling on my phone, scrolling through YouTube, I would look up these, MJ highlights over and over again. I'm like, you know what? Would would the present generation really have something, that could connect them to, that time where MJ was at his absolute best, where, he was cemented as the greatest of all time. Like I kept on thinking, what would be that connective experience? And for me, this was it. This
Mm-hmm.
was it was this docu series. Like nothing just was as immersive as as it was like a time capsule, so to speak, where you know hoopers of your generation who
Mm-hmm.
weren't there to experience the live MJ on TV, or hear about him from that period. This really put it into a whole different perspective about him being the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
It was I would say this was the next best thing to watching him live. And like for you, what's your whole takeaway about you know finally experiencing or witnessing what MJ meant to that generation of
Mm-hmm.
basketball fans? And 22 years 22 years after that, it's it still resonates very much to this day.
For sure, I think that docu series was the only thing that could really contextualize like his greatness. Because you're right, we can watch highlights, but obviously highlights only show the best of a person, and they don't show it within the rest, the greater NBA and the greater league. But for us to see on previously, you know, undiscovered side of MJ and even the league and all the drama,
Yeah.
it really has proven to the next generation, the generation who wasn't as familiar with him and the Bulls. It gives them an insight of how monumental their impact has been to not only basketball but like the world of sports. MJ becoming a global icon and the Bulls becoming one of the most recognizable basketball franchise even worldwide.
It was like for me, it was such a wave of nostalgia, like seeing
Mm-hmm.
my Superman of my childhood just come alive again on the screen, and having him just it was a different thing having him see it, see his highlights on the iPad and watch his reaction firsthand. It was so different. Like, what? It was just a whole connective experience that you just have to appreciate it. It's something, I haven't seen this from any other sports documentary I've watched. Like,
I think
for
I think this was ESPN's most watched docu series. I,
yeah,
I did. I was googling a lot of things about the Last Dance and the making behind of it, and how much blood, sweat, and tears was put into the filming of the series. And I think it's taken 20 years of footage, a lot of back and forth, a lot of planning, a lot of coordination from the film team to kind of piece the story together. And I think all the hard work put behind to it is just a testament of how great this story is. And
right.
I think that's part of the reason why it has been such an immersive experience, even for, let's say, fans like me who did not live through MJ's career.
Mm.
And because of all the care it took to, to put into the film, the
Yeah.
docu-series rather, I kind of get an inside scoop on what it was like.
Exactly, exactly. And you know what? It just came at a perfect time. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Even with us, all in quarantine, and
Mm-hmm.
it was the only thing that was sort of uniting basketball fans around the world, right? It was
Yeah.
again an experience, a connective, immersive experience that we all could relate to. Like every Sunday night in the States, but
Mm-hmm.
Monday over here. Like it would be that I don't know how to explain it. The Bulls, captivated audiences in the '90s, pretty much the same way this docu series
Yeah.
just fixated us for the 5 straight weeks of just watching it, right? Every Sunday, and I mean, it was I don't know, I, I couldn't describe it any better. Like, how would I just couldn't encapsulate it, after 5 straight weeks of witnessing all of this again. It was just like, for me, it was the '90s all over again. Michael Jordan was my.
Yeah. I think especially now at the time where everyone's kind of stuck behind the walls of their own home,
Mm.
it it kind of gives us a taste. Well, for you, it gave you a taste of nostalgia. It
Mm.
kind of reconnected us to the outside world.
Yeah.
Somehow it gave us a way to connect to other people around the globe, which we have been sorely missing ever since the COVID situation happened. And I think it couldn't have been released at the more perfect time. If let's say things were back to normal and the docu-series came out, would I have been as eager to watch it every Monday? Quite honestly, I probably would have been swamped with work.
Sure.
But now that everyone's kind of clinging onto any form of hope that will bring them closer to the way things once, the way
Yeah.
that things used to be, I think that's why it has gotten such a great response.
Right. Well said, Selena. Like, but given the fact that I think they had to cut short the number of episodes because they were
Mhm.
rushing. They were rushing the final
Mhm.
production process for it. So instead of, I don't know what was their initial target number of episodes, but they cut it down to 10,
Mhm.
and they had to wrap it up so that they could release it by April and going all the way to May. So did it give you a feeling of at the end of episode 9 and 10, did it give you a feeling of it was kind of rushed a bit, or rather you'd want to see more of it if there was a chance? Like it left you with the feeling of wanting more from the whole docu series.
Yeah, I think it did to an extent, but I'm not sure if that was to do with the fact that the episodes were limited. But I think it was really the intention of MJ to kind of have this view of himself that is up to the interpretation of the audience.
Mm,
I think I was going through some articles about how how they filmed The Last Dance,
yeah.
and me being kind of a film nerd and all of
Mm,
that. He only agreed to film the docu series if he always had the last say.
that's
That's
him.
why if you notice, when he gets shown the iPad, it's the interview and he can respond to it, but there's never
Yeah.
that response to his response. And
Uh,
I think it's because of that you kind of get a sense that there are a lot of things MJ is trying to protect about himself, and so we'll never really get the complete story.
mhm.
Even if this were to have been extended another 10 episodes, I feel like things would have kind of just run that way, where it's what everyone says against what MJ says, and he has the final
Right.
word rather. So
Right.
I think that feeling of wanting more is always going to be there, because MJ is never going to reveal
Yeah.
everything that makes him MJ.
You're right. You're right. Like there was always this reservation, like you could never really get to him. Unlike, with a LeBron, like he's all in social media. Like you got direct access to him 24/7. But MJ is kind of like it sort of preserves the mystique and aura about him,
Mm-hmm.
where you just can't fully grasp him. You just can't touch the legend of
Yeah.
that he is, right? I mean that's what makes him unique compared to other superstars of today, right?
Yeah, I think it also has to do with the fact that social media is more widespread now. So not just with athletes, but just celebrity and global pop icons, we feel that we know them, or we're entitled to kind of seeing the every behind the scenes of their life. But back then, when it wasn't as common to share everything via social media, there was kind of this aura, this untouchable. They were the untouchables.
Right.
So I think to preserve that kind of image, and maybe because that was like their generation of basketball, it was kind of left. There were so many things left unsaid, even though this docu series was really supposed to be like a tell-all docu series. You The whole time when MJ would respond to any of the interviews, you could tell that there was just something he was kind of holding back. Like, he gave very vague answers.
And you said it right, Selena. Like MJ, he had final say on all the production process involved in this. So in the end, like we've talked about MJ stories on the side, how he torch opponents and things like that. But if there's one lesson that we've learned from his career is that he always gets the last laugh. He always gets the final word, and it was still true until until this documentary. MJ always had the final say on everything. Like he's the ultimate competitor. He's the ultimate winner. That's why. And I mean, again, episodes 9 and 10. This one really, focused on the Last Dance as the Last Dance. It was, the last hurrah of the Chicago Bulls, that 97 and 98 season. And as always, we'll go through some highlights of it. And let's begin with the 1997 NBA Finals. And the primary motivation for MJ here was him being snubbed from the MVP from the
Mhm.
MVP race. With Karl Malone ultimately winning the league's top individual honor that season. And you know, do you think that it was a case of you having your experience in sports writing? Do you think it was a case of voter and media fatigue, where it was always MJ who was winning the MVP? And then, so the backstory is Sports Illustrated's Jackie McMullen, from starting March, they began writing columns about Karl Malone being, oh, he's the underappreciated superstar. Karl Malone's always second to MJ. Oh, the Utah Jazz are winning, but nobody notices them. So in a way, they were kind of conditioning the voters to say, you know what, why not give Karl Malone a shot? And probably, do you think it was a case of that, where, you know what, if you voted MJ for what, 4 straight seasons already for the MVP, then why not give the nod to someone else?
I think definitely not to not to Karl Malone obviously had a fantastic career, and he was, I think MJ said it himself, not to say that he wasn't deserving of it, but MJ was MJ at that time. And I think MJ was just the figure that everyone loved to villainize.
Mm,
And it goes back to his, even when his father had died and his whole gambling controversy, people
yes.
were just fabricating these stories just to put him in a negative light. And I don't know if that was just, people actually believe that, or they just wanted to knock
Uh-huh.
him off the top. And I think
Uh-huh.
it's all, he always believed that people just wanted to knock him off the top. So it possibly could have been because of those reasons.
Right.
I also remember, if I were to compare it to anything in this current generation of
Yeah.
basketball, the season when the Warriors did not stop winning, the
Mm.
NBA kind of got really boring for me. If
Mm.
I'm being honest, it's
Yeah.
highlight after highlight of the Warriors dominating, and I'm like, oh, where's the competition?
Uh-huh.
So maybe the NBA and the audience just wanted to kind of spice things up and say,
Could be.
if we dethrone MJ, will that dethrone the Bulls, or will that motivate them? Or,
Uh-huh. But as we always learn to realize, snubbing MJ of something, denying him of something, criticizing him for something, is just pouring gasoline all over the fire that
Mhm.
is his competitive drive. And I mean, game one of the 1997 NBA Finals, Malone misses the two go-ahead free throws, final 20 seconds, and Jordan just swishes the game winner at the buzzer, and he does this, clench fist bump, as if to say, you know what, Byron Russell, I think you were talking smack at me before, about me switching to baseball because you could guard my ass, like Byron Russell said so, right? So this is my response. Just don't you just love it when, again, when the greatest player just silences any criticism about him repeatedly, over and over again. You doubt my greatness? Here's what I come up with.
Mhm. It's crazy how he's able to turn all of the hate into motivation.
He does.
Any athlete, has received their fair share of hate, but to be able to rise above it the way that MJ did, not just to silence it but to use it, is it speaks waves about the kind of player that he is. And it's a very in your face kind of aura. Like,
Yes.
he won't let you live it down. Like,
Yeah.
knowing MJ, he probably has it all stored in his memory. The time that this player said this about me, or the time this reporter said this about me, and he uses it as motivation.
True. True. And going deeper into this 97 series. So the series goes back to Utah, and then here comes the infamous, the flu game, where the last dance just. I mean, for you, does it sounds less dramatic when it's called the bad pizza game, the food poisoning game. Like MJ never bothered to correct this, right? So was this a case of him just let it stand as the flu game? It sounds more dramatic, so to speak.
I think I think it was just a matter of hyping up, the already popular matchup then. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I actually hadn't known that whole backstory.
Right.
I think the pizza food poisoning story came out. It did come out a few years ago, but up until then, it was just known as the flu game, and even I just knew it as the flu game. And so when I heard that story, I was like, "Oh, what's this? It's this drama. This is
Uh-huh.
I love this drama." And I think
Yeah.
it may have also just been added for kind of dramatic effect. I know
Uh-huh.
there are a lot of skeptics out there who believe that the story was just slightly twisted to make it seem that
Mm.
there may have been sabotage or
Yeah.
whatnot. But
Yeah.
I think regardless of the story behind it, it just boils down to the fact that being sick on a regular basis is the most terrible feeling. But being sick and having to play 40 plus minutes
Uh-huh.
in a 7 game long series
Uh-huh.
is just a feat, like a different feat in itself. So I
True.
think that's what it really does come down to. Like regardless of what caused his illness, he still played through it.
Right, right. And Selena, you hit it right on the head. Because Scottie Pippen said about it, he showed that no matter how sick he was, no matter how tired he was grabbing Scottie Pippen just to stand up. He
Mm-hmm.
was falling down and Scottie was just, you know what, I got you, man. And Scottie says, he was still there to prove again he's still the best player in the
Mm-hmm.
world. No bad pizza or flu can keep him down. I mean, like for me, remembering the flu game, it was for me it was comparable to how when Kobe tore his Achilles and he still
Mm-hmm.
walked gingerly up to the free throw line just to make his free throws. Or
Yes.
even recently, Klay Thompson tore his
Mm-hmm.
ACL,
ACL, yeah.
stood up, shot his free throws. But this is for an entire game, for 44 minutes. He still scores 38.7 rebounds and dishes out 5 assists and grabs 3 steals in an NBA Finals game when they're putting the ice pack on his neck. He's he was vomiting the night before. I mean, you had to be in awe just
Mm-hmm.
seeing this, right?
I mean, in that state, I would probably not even be able to get out of bed.
It was that bad, right? They were saying he
Mm-hmm.
was curled up in a fetal position the whole night, vomiting. Just imagine you being dehydrated, and just you're out of sync. You're just whack. The whole
Mm-hmm.
system's into whack. But like, could you ever recall a game where you were so gassed out and you were just not feeling it at all, but you had to gut it out?
Hmm. Well, I don't think I could compare it to a game, but kind of in terms of like an injury story, there was, after tearing my ACL, you kind of feel defeated and you want to just stay on the floor. And even if it's
Mm.
the middle of a game, you kind of just want to stay on the floor. And
Yeah.
and I think the only thing I can compare it to, even coming close to that kind of MJ story, is even willing myself to stand up again.
Mm.
And imagine that's the smallest action of getting up after an injury is already tough for any
Yeah.
athlete. Like, more than it being tough physically, it's just tough mentally, because the moment something like that happens, everything's rushing through your head. It's like, I guess my career is over. Like, how do I
Yeah.
bounce back from this? And
Yeah.
so the small act of standing up is already such a big feat.
Uh,
And for athletes like Kobe and Clay to take the free throws after an injury, that's like stepping it up a notch. But then for MJ to go through the mental process and then step up is taking up a notch further.
right. Right. And you mentioned about stepping up over here. I think one of the key players who stepped up really, really big time for the Bulls in that 1997 NBA Finals. You know him as the champion coach of the Golden State Warriors. But what was it like to, you know, hear about firsthand, you know, Steve Kerr's tragic family story? Him having to just fight and claw for his NBA spot. He wasn't an athletic guy. He was this
Mhm.
skinny white dude, who could only shoot a jump shot. But like, how is it like for you gaining a whole different appreciation of Steve Kerr?
I think I really enjoyed the segment and the focus on Steve Kerr because he's kind of that figure that connects this generation of basketball with the previous generation
Right.
of basketball.
Right.
Because he was really the only icon that kind of still, exists in the NBA today. I mean, obviously MJ is still a big name, but Steve Kerr is still actively, participating in the NBA. So I think that was a really great way to kind of connect with a younger audience.
Mm.
But I think what I did appreciate about his story is that he was an underdog, and
Right.
he really used the tragedy to fuel him. But actually, even more than that, it's just he kind of showed how his life he really also balanced. He had a balance of academics, and he was a good student. And I think that wasn't really as talked about in the past docu series.
Right.
But I guess it just resonated with me because more than being an athlete, there are other things you also have to prioritize. And
Sure.
knowing his family background, his parents were both academics, and
Sure.
he was able to do both and exceed in both, and maximize his potential in both his intelligence by now becoming a coach and also him being a basketball player. I think that's what really stood out to me.
Right, right. And how about that, that tough as nails attitude? We mentioned Steve Kerr getting into a fist fight with MJ, proving that,
Mhm.
hey, you know what, I'm also tough as nails. I could trade punches with you.
Mhm.
Having that, mental strength, emotional strength, to just carry through despite, family tragedies that happened with him. I mean, does that also resonate with you having, just this tough, resilient attitude, whether in sports or, in other areas?
Mhm. I think I think any basketball player, any athlete can kind of relate to that in the sense that for most they really bury themselves in their craft. They bury themselves in their sport. I mean, as soon as you enter the court or the field or the pitch or the track,
Mm,
everything else is just silence.
right.
And when he said that he the next day after he got the news, he went to practice.
Mm,
If you're not an athlete, you might think you're crazy. You need some time to mourn.
yeah.
But I'm sure even you were like, no, that's normal.
Mm,
Our sport is our escape, and
yeah.
so what he did was not out of character for an athlete.
Sure. Well said. Well said. And also, I think what athletes can get from Steve Kerr's, story is that remember when timeout and then MJ says, "Oh, they're gonna double team me," and then Steve, be ready. And Steve said, I'll be ready to take it. Just find
Mhm.
me. And this guy just fights and claws his way to get to get on an NBA roster even because he's not one of the sought after free agents or anything like that. But Steve Kerr's winning shot, I think, if Selena, if you agree with me, it teaches athletes just to be ready. Just be ready when
Mhm.
your number is called. You never know when greatness is going to be demanded of you. Regardless of your skill set, regardless of whether you're a starter or a bench player or a role player, but you just have to be ready. Like when greatness is demanded of you, you just have to be ready to respond at that moment. And Steve Kerr proved that, right?
Mhm. I think it's definitely added motivation,
Mm,
seeing that moment and knowing that your time could come whenever, even when you least expect it. I'm sure Steve Kerr didn't expect to be taking the game-winning shot. In his wildest dreams, he would never thought that it would be him.
yeah.
And it is added fuel for any player who otherwise had been feeling, they've been underutilized or whatever personal reasons, that they hadn't been maximized or if they're an underdog. I mean, knowing that it can happen at any time, that's definitely a reason to keep working.
Sure.
But even more than that, I think it's also just in general a lesson to kind of teams and organizations. There needs to be trust within the system.
Right.
I
Right.
don't think MJ would have said, be ready if he also didn't trust Steve Kerr. Like
Mm,
while it was on Steve Kerr to be ready at any moment,
right.
it was also MJ's recognition of the talents of his
Yeah.
teammates
See.
to set him up. And I think that's something, as an athlete we can appreciate. It's just
Mm,
you could tell that this organization, this team were really like a band of brothers, and they had gone through so much that it was really not a single player who carried them all the way. While MJ did,
The
a
heavy
lot of the
lifting.
work, the heavy lifting of the team, he also had a supporting task that helped him get all the way to the finals.
Sure. Excellent, Selina. Now, you know what? Also with Steve Kerr, though, he had the perfect response to MJ in the victory parade. He said, "You know what? I had to bail MJ out again." Who would have, who would have thought that guy was so funny? You know,
Yeah.
we've seen him on the sidelines in Golden State, but damn, this guy has this
Mhm.
guy has a thing for jokes at the right
Yeah.
time.
I think MJ and Steve Kerr's relationship, even though the series was only 10 episodes long and there
Uh,
was not really a big focus on it, for some reason they probably did connect because they had similar stories of losing their father,
right.
and then they had the whole fist fight in the gym,
Uh huh.
and maybe that's why there was kind of that mutual respect. I don't think
Right.
anyone could have made that joke, the way
Uh
that
huh.
Steve Kerr did.
Uh huh.
And I think it was really great. It was really great to see the camaraderie between them.
Right. I mean, that incident. I think him getting the black eye from
Mm-hmm.
MJ. It just proved to MJ that you know what, you can count on me. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
break under pressure. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
back down from nobody. If you need me, I'll be there. And they proved it. That was the
Mm-hmm.
game-winning shot for them. But also, you know what, Selena, Steve Kerr was able to accomplish something that MJ, Scotty, or Dennis Rodman, or neither Phil Jackson ever did. Was he was able to seal that four-peat because after playing for the Bulls in '98, he went to the Spurs in '99 and won another title with Greg Popovich over there in his first year with the Spurs. So I mean, just think about that for a second. The leadership of Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, absorbing that, and he goes to San Antonio and learns from Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Like, how do you see this? These leadership, branches, these leadership influences,
Mm-hmm.
guiding Steve Kerr in his, the way he handled Golden State and their championship run.
Yeah, I think even before he was a player, you could kind of tell that IQ wise, he was up there.
Mm,
Again, going back to the fact that his parents were intelligent people, they were academics, and I guess he kind of grew up in that environment where he studied hard, worked hard, and you
yeah,
could kind of tell that he would probably grow up to be someone with deep analytical thinking,
right.
and so to even be under the shadow of those greats, it has really worked to his advantage. And I think Steve Kerr is kind of an example of someone who doesn't just plays who just doesn't play hard but plays smart.
Right. Right. Given his physical limitations and everything, right? He was able to
Mhm.
maximize that.
Yeah.
And again, I think also though, you know, experiencing how brutal MJ could be. And then he goes over to San Antonio where, Greg Popovich is the ultimate general there. He
Mhm.
dictates everything that happens in San Antonio. And then you have a leader like Tim Duncan who's like the perfect big brother. He wraps his arms around you.
Yeah.
He's quiet, he's timid, but I think that also prepared Steve Kerr to handle different personalities in Golden State. You have Steph Curry, who's a humble superstar, not doesn't
Mhm.
have a big ego, and then you have guys like a total wacko in Draymond Green, right? Who has a mission of hitting other players below the belt, literally.
Mhm.
Literally. And then you have the uber sensitive millennial in Kevin Durant, where he's so affected by social media and everything like that. Like Steve Kerr just knows his way around people.
Mhm.
Like that's my key takeaway from it. He just
Mhm.
knows how to adjust the different personalities.
Yeah,
Do you
I
see
think
that?
he's definitely lucky with the kind of personnel he was able to experience. I
Mm,
mean, you're right. He dealt with people in polar opposite like fields in terms of emotion and attitude,
mm,
and he's very lucky that he's equipped. And I think, but more than having that exposure, again, him as a person and considering everything he's gone through, I think he's probably just a very empathetic person.
right,
And
right.
so for him to kind of pick up on those different traits and then learn how to adjust and handle that, um, it's hard for a coach to do, but I think
Mm.
he's done it very successfully.
Right, right. So, Sil, so we talked about Steve Kerr. One of, I think he still has the record for being the most accurate percentage-wise
Mhm.
three-point shooter career-wise in the NBA. So props to him for that. But we got to talk about another shooter who was featured in the in episodes 9 and 10, and the 1998 season gave us a great insight into one of the best individual rivalries, one of the best shooting guard rivalries. I'm talking Michael Jordan versus Reggie Miller. We've
Mhm.
talked about this guy in our previous recap though, but did you enjoy that trash talk story about Reggie Miller talking smack, the young Reggie talking smack to MJ, and what did he get? I mean, how was that? How was that for you?
Again, I think we saw it throughout the whole series. You talk smack against MJ, you get what you deserve, and it wasn't any different. I think the only thing that made it different was that Reggie, out of all the players that he's faced, was the closest to keeping up.
Right.
Like you didn't have Charles Barkley, but the other greats who faced MJ, but there was something special about the Reggie Miller MJ rivalry.
It was. It was. But Selena, though, one of the major contributors to why Reggie Miller had such a big, uncontrollable mouth and bravado, and just he just had the balls to just go at it against MJ was it came from his own battles in his own
Mhm.
home where Reggie wasn't even the best player in his own home. That we've talked about our hypothetical brother sister one on one in the backyard thing, but Reggie Miller was always second fiddle to his older sister,
Mhm.
Cheryl Miller, who is regarded as the greatest women's basketball player of all time. And, Reggie was, I mean, he spoke about this in previous interviews where he said the reason why he had to develop that attitude, that swag, was because Cheryl Miller would always send his shots to the garden, send his shots to the parking lot. That was his reason why. So he always had to get an edge, so to speak,
Mhm.
against his opponents. And well, if you're playing against Cheryl Miller, then you had to bring your A game against your older sister. But like, what was it like for you seeing a guy like in the same position as MJ? Because he yeah he faced like other all stars, but there were
Mhm.
there were there were big guys like Charles Barkley was a power forward.
Mhm.
Shaq was of course a center, but Reggie Miller played the same position. They played in the same conference, and he had the bravado and the trash talk and the flair for dramatic in the clutch, just like MJ. Like
Mhm.
he was like, how was it seeing that? Oh, MJ had the perfect foil to his narrative, right?
I think every hero deserves a villain, and I'm not gonna say who's who in that rivalry or that
Uh-huh.
foil, but it was just what I respect about Reggie Miller is his confidence,
Supreme.
supreme confidence that carried him, to where he ended up going. But as a star who's always sorry, as a player who's always under the shadow of any star,
Mm.
and we spoke about that, how even the greats who played during the time of MJ will never be recognized as the great because MJ was still in the league. And I
Yeah.
think Reggie Miller is one of those people. And I think even he knew it back then.
Uh
And
huh.
so to have that confidence to carry through, the way he played and the way he faced MJ so fearlessly, makes him also stand out as one of the greats.
Right. Right. And I mean, Reggie Miller just doesn't get enough credit for me personally
Mm-hmm.
because he's one of my all-time favorite shooting guards. But he just doesn't get that much credit because he played for a small market team in Indiana. I mean, again, he was in that era where yeah, he was one of the best shooting guards, but he would fall into the class of another Clyde Drexler.
Mm-hmm.
He's Reggie. I mean, MJ took all the headlines, but
Yeah.
at least for those clutch moments, for those dramatic playoff moments, whether it was against the Knicks, against the Bulls, Reggie just loved it. Reggie just loved the theatrics of what, crunch time, it's Miller time, give it to me. And I mean, that just that just shows what type of player he was. I think Jalen Rose even said, what, a lot of players can make tough shots in first three quarters, but when you need a shot, fourth quarter, like 10 seconds of the shot clock, oh no, it's a Reggie Miller time.
Mm-hmm.
And Selena, game three of that 1998 Eastern Conference Final Series. This was a brutal series, by the way. for the Chicago Bulls. Really, really
Mhm.
brutal for them. Reggie scores 28, and then shooting 107, and shooting, he goes 9 for 15 in the field in that 107-105 win. And in game four, Reggie Miller, with a blatant push off of Michael Jordan sideline inbounds play, I mean, he just wishes it, and he
Mhm.
couldn't believe what he just did. He's jumping up around, twirling up and down. He just doesn't know what he just did. And I mean, could at that point could you say that, oh damn, the Chicago Bulls are in danger? Like this was the first real sense of danger for MJ in his prime of being eliminated in the playoffs. And like, how was it seeing the Bulls just and MJ just like stunned and wow, being eliminated could be a reality for us at this point.
Mhm. I don't think I don't think that ever crossed MJ's mind.
Really.
I think in the docu series he is kind of portrayed as this very confident, very confident player, and he would say a lot of things that, oh no, it's just a bump in the road, and
Uh-huh.
I legitimately think he did believe that.
Ah,
And
good
it was
call.
after that shot that they had the 0.4 seconds left, right? I think the Bulls still had a
Yep.
chance to, and they focused on Larry Bird's reaction.
Uh-huh.
Out of everyone was screaming, in the crowd, going crazy, and Larry Bird was just there, stoic,
Because he knew that
because he
MJ
knew
might
there
be.
was still a chance. And I
Mm,
think even the Bulls knew, even MJ knew that while they would go through these hurdles, well, yes, they would be challenged. At the end of the day, they'd still walk away with it.
right, right. And I think this was the ultimate gut check for the Bulls.
Mhm.
If anything, if anything else could be said about it. I mean, they were on their backs, and the last dance was on its last leg, so to speak, right? And MJ again responded to the ultimate test. I mean, Selena, how true is this? Repeating as champions, it depends on how a team deals with constant panic of, we might lose our title. And the
Mhm.
constant pressure of, we have to deliver again and again and again. When our backs are against the wall, we have to do it. And I think that's what we remember so much about this last stand of the Bulls, especially in that Indiana Pacers series. What cemented their legacy was not the first five of their titles, but this last one, because
Mhm.
they were already running on fumes, right? They were already gassed, and it was just pride and will keeping themselves in that game, in that series. And how did you see, Selena, like MJ, Scotty, just bring it all together just to survive Indiana?
Mhm. I think the more you win, the harder it is to keep winning.
It does.
What people don't realize is that when you're a team with this win streak and you win consecutive champions, you think it's, oh yeah, it's in the bag for the next season and the season after that.
Mm.
But as soon as you keep winning, the target in your back gets bigger, because every team that faces you goes in with a mentality, oh, the Bulls have more to lose.
Yeah.
And more than that being kind of physical pressure, it's also mental pressure. Having to kind of go through every game saying, okay, we're gonna face another team who's gonna try to dethrone us. Okay, we're
Mm.
gonna face another team who's gonna try to dethrone us again, night after night.
Yeah.
It was a lot to pick themselves up from, after like 3 consecutive seasons, to be able to
Mm.
do that and kind of rally their team. The trio of MJ, Scotty, and Dennis Rodman, it just shows how mentally tough they were. Like, above being physically tough, the roughness that they played with, they really did have to kind of rally the team
Uh-huh.
together.
Uh-huh. Right. And you remember this, like 1998 Eastern Conference Final, Game 7. Like Jordan was just beating Rick Smits for the jump ball. Scotty was out hustling, sorry, Reggie Miller for loose balls. The Bulls were just crashing the offensive glass. And then Jordan, yeah, he was struggling with dead legs already. He had a flat jump shot, but he just started driving and driving and driving, getting to the foul line repeatedly. And you could see end of the game, Jordan and Pippen, their hands were on their knees. They were gassed. They
Mm-hmm.
were at midcourt and they were like, you know what? They couldn't summon enough energy to celebrate even, and they would just not allow the Bulls to lose that game, that series. And how true is this, Self? you don't learn about great teams like the Bulls when they're up and winning, but you learn more about who they are. You know, when they're struggling, just clawing
Mhm.
their way to remain on top, right?
Yeah, I think the greatest moments I witnessed was seeing, the trio and the whole Bulls team fight through all of those moments where they were at their lowest or they were at their most fatigued. Um, you're right. Like you don't really see character when they win. I
Mm,
guess it's through the losses that you really are able to see how they are as athletes, how they are as people,
right.
and every athlete has had that moment of fighting through fatigue, and it's tough, and so we can kind of recognize and appreciate the Bulls doing it because at the stage that they were and it being the NBA high stakes Eastern Conference Finals,
Mm,
it's that added the added stress on them,
right.
and for them to kind of be able to push through it and keep themselves motivated, keep themselves running is a crazy feat.
Sure is. Sure is. And to add to that, after surviving the brutal series against Indiana in the finals, it's a rematch altogether of the
Mhm.
'97 finals against again another team was gunning for your head in the Utah Jazz. Of course, they're bitter about the previous year and they wanna take this back, for good
Mhm.
measure. But I mean, we're talking about the different, the how do you say this? The filmography of the docu series though. But here we see for the first time Jasmine, Marcus, and Jeffrey, his kids. They made their first
Mhm.
appearance in the
Mhm.
Last Dance, and you know what? And you get to see why perhaps he didn't really want to involve his family in anything because of the immense pressure, the media coverage, the whole circus. MJ just didn't want his family to be, embroiled in the, controversy or anything like that. But um, at that, in that part of his life, though, like you could say MJ was more, probably he wasn't the best family man because he was more
Mhm.
married to the game at that point. Like, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I agree. I think the whole series, I was kind of wondering, would his family even make an appearance? And I
Mm,
think while his father and his mother were mentioned a lot, his kids, his wife, they weren't really focused on. And you're right. I think it's more of a way to protect them,
uh,
and comparing that to kind of Kobe's career also, when he kind of retired from the game of basketball, that's when he realized, no, I have to be a girl dad. I have to focus on my family, and I think that's kind of similar to what maybe MJ had kind of experienced, being in the limelight, facing all that pressure. His
mm.
kids were younger than I think if I grew up with the Jordan name attached to mine,
Oh yeah.
I'd feel the immense, the immense stress and the immense anxiety of having to kind of live up to it, and then also knowing what to block out, what external noise to block out. And so maybe in that sense, Jordan was a family man because the underlying motivation was that he wanted to protect them.
Mm,
I think that's kind of the way I would see it. Yeah.
right, right. He was trying to protect them, and just from being in because he knew the stresses involved in it.
Exactly.
Like we talked
Exactly.
about the baseball, why he did
Hmm.
that, and probably he
Exactly.
didn't want his kids to have anything of that, any sort of the stress and pressure to deal with that. So yeah, I could see where that move is coming from. And then of course, 1998 finals, you get Dennis Rodman doing Dennis Rodman things, wrestling, skipping practice, which is insane. Who does that? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna wrestle with Hulk Hogan before before a game. Like, no, man, you just don't. But I mean
Hmm.
that was Dennis Rodman for you. But okay, so um, fast forward later into that series. So Game Five, Carmelo explodes for 39, and then the series goes back to Utah in Game Six, and here you see a broken down Scottie Pippen. He's grimacing, Selena, as he runs
Hmm.
up and down the court. His back is aching. Like,
Hmm.
even when he dunks, when he lands, you could see him just wincing. Like, damn, this. And if you've experienced like lower back pain, like ever in your life, like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's brutal. You feel it from your waist down to your ankles. And does that image of Scotty just, you know, the whole series, he's been roasted for being, oh, he was too concentrated on his contract, not getting enough money. He was, kind of being selfish in a way. But does that change quite your reputation of Scottie Pippen? Just seeing him fight through pain and just supporting MJ the best way that he could.
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot about his character when he came back on court and he knew he was gonna be a decoy.
Yeah.
And it's easy enough for any player who's experiencing that immense pain to tap out and just say, no, I'm done for the game. Let me just stay in the locker room and perform rehab or whatever. But for him to make that sacrifice because he knew that MJ needed him,
Yeah.
is again what makes him one of the best players. Not just like a best second man, but one of the best players.
Right.
And I completely stand by the claim that there's no MJ without Scotty. And
Sure.
and at the same time, I think Scotty actually did play a bigger role to MJ's whole career.
Sure. Like again, MJ said, right, there wouldn't be the 6 titles without, Scotty by my side. So I mean, props to Scotty for at least just showing up game 6.
Yeah.
He just showed up in that game. Even if he was gonna play decoy the whole time, he was still there. And Sel, right, as San Antonio Spurs fans, we could agree. 2014 finals, when it was the height of the Spurs' beautiful passing game. Like that was one of the best basketball master classes we'd ever see on the court. But for me, Game 6, 1998 NBA Finals is the most dramatic finals ending ever. In terms of the poetry, the theatrics, we got to witness, the most dramatic, theatric, and poetic version of Michael Jordan, and that was Game 6 of the 1998 Finals. Like, Sel, you've seen this, for you especially, the whole docu-series, you've seen, oh, late 80s Michael Jordan, I'm jumping higher than everyone else. I'm just a supreme athlete. Early 90s when he torches the Blazers and the Suns, he's the demigod of basketball. He's the greatest individual performer you'll see. But here comes, Game 6, 1998. MJ's 36. He doesn't have his hops anymore, but he just is so resilient, so intense. He doesn't exhibit, he's not jumping up and down like what he did in Cleveland, versus the Cavs before, but he celebrates with a simple, fist bump. I got this. He's not. He uses more guile, more experience, more cunning, more less flash but more fire inside of him. And you know what? Would this be one of your favorite versions of Michael Jordan, where he doesn't have the abilities anymore athletically, but mentally though, he could still, the competitor is still burning bright within him.
Yeah, I think I definitely appreciate kind of the well-rounded player that he was. Towards the later end of his career, when there were younger guys coming in, he outplayed them very intelligently in the sense that he knew that maybe he couldn't keep up with them physically, but he has years load of experience, and he used that to his advantage. So that kind of just proves that he was a master of the game. He knew how to control the game. And I think that's really what makes him one of the greats, is that more than being skilled and athletic and whatnot, he was also able to, he had an appreciation and a knowledge of the game that no other player at that time had.
Right. And Sel, he's 36 here in that last finals. And you know what? Can you imagine the demands of a 36-year-old to bring out the best in his ability when the game's on the line? Scotty has a bad back, and he knows at this point that if it goes to a game 7, the Bulls are so gassed, they're not going to survive game 7. So it was do or die for them at that point. And, Scotty said at that instance, dying seconds of the game, his only mentality was, get the hell out of the way. Let MJ perform. And it was like, I don't know, did you get this feeling too, where it was MJ back into his younger days, where it was his team. He was carrying the team all over again, on his back, on his shoulders. And here comes 1998 finals, game 6. We're down 3 with 40 seconds to go. Then he just goes for the kill. He rips out the heart of Utah. Just play back with this. Play back this sequence. He goes for a coast to coast layup. He strips Karl Malone on the right block, and then on the other end, 5 seconds left, shakes off Russell with a smooth pullback dribble. It's not a push off, no matter what.
It's not a push off. I agree. It's not.
It's not. It was his momentum. He was falling down. Like from that angle, fine. You might think he would be, his hand was under his butt cheek, so to speak. But no, it was more of the momentum. He was just,
He really was falling that direction. So
right, and he just pulls back, right at the nail, and then he just poses just for a few seconds that follow through, and he just swishes it, all in one sequence. Cell. No one touches that ball. Last 40 seconds, it's just MJ the whole time. And have you seen, another player just rip out the heart of the opposition by himself with a championship on the line, just like MJ?
Definitely not. I think something possessed MJ that night. And it was probably because most of them did know that it was like the last. It very much could have possibly been, and it was very likely to be MJ's last game. And so I guess something just took over, and what he was able to do, I can't even explain, because as a player, anyone would kind of love to be in that situation, to be put in that position to potentially win the game, but to actually do it, to actually be put in that situation and perform and succeed is unimaginable to many people.
True.
And in that last, the dying minutes of the game, Rodman didn't even bother to jog. He just jogged back. He just leisurely jogged back. He's like, yeah, no, it's MJ time.
Right.
And I think it was a fitting ending to his career.
It was. Like I would forget about the Washington Wizards episode, but this was probably the most iconic shot that there will ever be in an NBA Finals. And Selina, focus in this image for a moment. Travel back to June 1998, where MJ is posing for that final jump shot. It swishes through the net. He raises up his hands and says, "We got 6, right?" Finally, he cements his legacy as the best closer ever, the greatest player of all time. But, back in 1998, everyone agreed this is the greatest basketball player that we will ever see in our lifetime.
Yes.
But why is it that until today, 2020, we fans, media, players themselves still continue looking for the next MJ? We're still arguing who the GOAT is. We're still, anointing, oh, he's the next chosen one. Oh no, someone greater will come along. But why is it like that? Right? When in 1998 we all agreed that it's MJ, like case closed. But the debate just continues.
I think because the game is continually changing, and so they feel like, oh, if you were to put MJ in the context of today, there's no way he'd be able to keep up, and there's always going to be that comparison. And like I said earlier, MJ is the icon that everyone would love to dethrone.
Right.
And I think it's really that. I don't think anyone wants to put his achievements down. Everyone will always respect MJ, but just the fun of challenging his legacy. Maybe that's where the motivation is coming from. But I don't know. I was a believer before that the GOAT debate between LeBron, Kobe, and MJ was pretty tied, pretty even. But now I kind of understand, based on the context, like why MJ would have been considered in a league of his own.
Right. And like coming from me though, I mean, after the conclusion of The Last Dance, which perhaps is the best piece of evidence proving that MJ is in fact the greatest of all time, like the debate just resurfaced after that. Oh, like people are starting to claim that, what, LeBron is the best that there will ever be. But because LeBron in fact claimed it for himself after blocking Iguodala 2016 final. So he says, oh, that made me the greatest player of all time. But I mean, for me though, it's a flawed comparison to begin with because they're
Mhm.
completely different players. Completely
Mhm.
different. LeBron for me will always be your supersized, muscle-bound version of
Mhm.
a Scottie Pippen point forward or a Magic
Yeah.
Johnson, the perfect
Yeah.
facilitator who has the rare, physique and the DNA to just play all five positions on the court. But if we're talking about players who could just be mentioned in the same breath as Michael Jordan, for me it would only be Kobe Bryant. That's it. Like no other player. But even Kobe himself said that MJ was responsible for creating the Black Mamba. Like
Mhm.
he was his main influence because I mean, what's your whole take on this? Because 3 years from now, if LeBron still continues to be playing at this level until
Mhm.
his age 40 season, statistically he's gonna overtake MJ. Points. He might be even
Yeah.
he might be even ending up as number one overall in points scored. He might be entering the top five in assists, all time assists. So statistically, yeah, he's gonna overtake MJ though. But is that enough to consider him as the greatest of all time? Or what's your take on it?
I definitely think it's an unfair comparison to make. You're
Mm,
right. It's hard to debate, but I'm partially biased towards that kind of underdog story. And to me, LeBron isn't necessarily an underdog. He
uh-huh.
is a very rare specimen. He's athletic, he's strong,
Yeah.
he's he will dominate anyone in the league right now. But there was just something about the grit and the motivation and the determination of Kobe and Jordan that kind of would make them more comparable to each other than to LeBron. And I
Right.
think and I always bring it back to kind of contextualizing the league. Right now, the reason that LeBron does excel is because, comparatively, he will definitely stand out with with any against any of the current NBA players.
Yeah.
But if you were to have to put him in the generation that MJ played in, would he have stood up against Charles Barkley? Would he have gotten anywhere near close, Shaq?
Mm,
Would he have been able to dominate as much as he did today? And I feel like it would have been tough for him. But
mm,
conversely, if you had put MJ in today's league, I feel like
mm.
MJ could have still made his mark.
Good point. Good point. And to add to that, Sil, like in this age of social media, in this age of rapid fire information, with each
Mhm.
passing year, it seems that we keep on, us, basketball fans and athletes, though, we're gonna forget about, you know, what MJ did, his best ever moments, the iconic, dunk contest,
Mhm.
the 91 finals where he switches in midair, the comeback from baseball, even the shot in
Mhm.
1998. 10, 20, 30 years down the line, we probably would forget about that. We probably would wipe away from our memory again MJ's greatness. But I think that is why The Last Dance was so valuable in just preserving the
Yes.
greatness, the legacy of MJ's greatness
Mhm.
while cementing him as, he's the gold standard that, players who aspire to be the GOAT should live up to, right? And like, how, what's your whole idea about it?
I think I think it was very appropriate to create that kind of docu-series around him because it's definitely a legacy that it needs to be cemented.
Mm,
Um, not just to kind of make him seem like Superman or the greatest of all time. It's just for any NBA player to aspire to be like anyone, it should be MJ. He should
right,
be seen as the gold standard.
right.
Take away all the accolades, take away all the titles. More than that, his love and passion for the game and his skill for the game is just something that everyone should emulate.
Sure,
And also going back to how much of a global icon he was before athletes were even considered celebrities, he kind of paved the way for that.
sure.
And I think it's kind of important to also recognize because he really he really made it popular
Mm-hmm,
for athletes to be seen as those kind of icons.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. True. Like he was the pioneer of what the celebrity, the
Mhm.
how big LeBron is of an icon today. Like they can all trace that back to MJ, and how his like Mike campaign started it. How him being Air Jordan
Mhm.
just took made him greater than the game of basketball. And itself before we end though, you know I think I remember what Coach Enzo Flo of the Blue Eaglets told me about. When you're talking about greatness, the greatest of all time, you will be judged to incredibly high standards. And you know what? Again, with all the stories that come out, with each passing day, y- we tend, we forget about MJ's dominance just as fast as we forget about LeBron's monumental finals collapses. Like not too long ago, 2011, LeBron at the peak of the Heatles mania,
Mhm.
he wilted under the pressure of Dirk Nowitzki's Mavs. Like there was this, right? If you remember,
Mhm.
he just blanked out in
Yeah.
one of those finals games. And then in 2014, when the Spurs were crushing the Heat, you could sense LeBron wasn't he didn't want to be there anymore in Miami. Like
Mhm.
he was more focused on, I wanna join the Cavs in free agency. I was looking he was looking ahead to his next big move. And
Mhm.
I think that's what separates, MJ from the whole greatest of all time discussion is he was still able not only the 6-0, the undefeated record in the finals though, but MJ knew that the Bulls were gonna break up at the end of the season, no matter what they did. And yet he still comes up with that dramatic game 6 victory, all in his him just taking over, proving that he's the best closer that there is in that final few seconds. And you couldn't just script it any better than that, right?
Yeah. I think what separates them is basketball now has become more commercial in the sense that the drama of the contract signing and how much the deals are being made in the trades,
Yeah.
it's becoming a lot more prominent, and you can kind of tell that there are some players who treat basketball as also a business.
Hmm.
And that time when LeBron was thinking, I'm done with this organization,
Hmm.
maybe it's time for a change. That something like that, I feel like would never happen to MJ. Even with trade, let's say trade rumors or everything that happened with Jerry Krause and everything, he had this way of again using it as motivation and silencing it.
Mm.
And I think that is really the difference, the key difference between the two of them.
Right, right. Great point, Sev. And just to end, our 4 straight weeks of recapping
Mhm.
MJ's dominance in with the Last Dance Hockey series. Here's a piece that I pulled out from one of my favorite authors, in basketball, Bill Simmons. This was from his book of basketball, dated. The updated version was in 2010. So this was when
Mhm.
LeBron was, he just joined the Heatles that
Yeah.
time. And here's what Bill Simmons had to say about it. This brings us back to the Jordan mystique. He's the only celebrity who pulls that story from beginning to end. MJ's force of personality was that great. So yeah, LeBron might approach him someday, and if not him, someone else. You will instinctively want to pass that torch to the next person. That's just the way this stuff works. Again, we always want the next one to be greater than the last one. And it's impossible for the last one to keep defending the title once the memories start fading. Just remember that superstar X can't pass Jordan solely by putting up triple doubles, breaking scoring records, and winning multiple championships. They have to be a force of personality that compares to presidents and tycoons. They have to surpass a competitiveness better suited for a dictator. They have to keep peaking well after we believe they could keep peaking. They have to remain the coolest person in the room after there's only one tangible reason for them to hold on to that title. And they have to pull out stories with endings like, look at that, he's just like us at the end of the day. So Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player of all time, as well as the most memorable, and maybe you need to be both. End of quote. Does that sum it up for you, Sel?
Yeah, I think that's the most fitting way to put it. You know, yeah, MJ encompassed so many values that was just beyond basketball, and he's not only the greatest player but the most memorable one. And for anyone to even compare, they have to achieve both, which is a tough act to follow.
Right, right. And with that, Sel, we have ended our 4 straight weeks of recapping the last
Bittersweet
dance.
ending.
It is. But as we say, as the Chicago Bulls dynasty ended, all good things must come to a close. So with that, I want to thank you again for doing this. Like for the past 4 weeks, we've been watching our you know glued glued to our TV screens. Just soaking in everything that we could learn about MJ. And I really really appreciate all your insights and just coming in coming over and just talking hoops with me. I mean, it was such an educational experience for me, as
Yeah.
it I think as it was for you, right?
For sure. Yeah, it was definitely my pleasure. Again, since I wasn't alive during that time, it was very refreshing to kind of learn everything. I thought I knew a lot about his career based on the highlights alone, but there was just so much depth to the story, and it added because you had a lot of things to share. And I do remember I owe you a fact.
Oh,
I don't have
here we go.
quite a story. I don't have a story, but I have a fact that
Okay.
I found quite amusing.
Let's
And this
hear
is
it.
not this is not. I don't want to tarnish MJ's reputation, but I feel like we just need to humanize him for a bit because
Okay.
he's been on a pedestal. But in 1990,
Uh-huh.
the 3-point shootout in 1990, I
Hmm.
think in that season MJ was averaging 35% from
Uh-huh.
the three, but he agreed to be part of the 3-point shootout. And
Okay.
he only scored 5. He only made 5.
Well,
5 3-pointers. Yeah.
let's just
And
say
I think
let's
that
just
was
say
definitely something that just like humanized him for me.
well, you can't have it all, right? Even if you're the greatest of all time, you can't have it all. So let's leave it at that. And to his defense, though, 3 pointers weren't in vogue in 1990, so it wasn't. That was before Steph Curry and everything. So I'm still his legacy is not in any way tarnished. There's no chink in his armor. He's still the greatest of all time. So with that said, I think the next time I'm going to see you is for our one-on-one game,
For sure.
wherever
I've
that
been practicing. I've been practicing.
wherever that may be. Keep yourself at home. Stay home and keep practicing. Stay safe. Thank you so much, Selina, for
For sure.
this whole Last Dance recap that we had. Appreciate you. Just your stories and just talking here. Talking hoops.
Likewise.
All right, so thank you. Take care.
Bye.
See you
See you.
soon.
Stay safe.
All right.
Welcome to the Rundown, where we take you right into the action with the latest sports news, updates, game previews, breakdown, and analysis in, around, across, and beyond the Ateneo. And now, let's get ready to run down!